The sneakiest technique in country blues just might be those repeated hammer-ons like you hear in Mississippi John Hurt's Coffee Blues. Maybe you can kind of play it, but deep down you know it just doesn't sound right. And I've been there. I struggled with this technique myself. So in this lesson, I'll show you my systematic approach that finally helped this click for me, using some examples from both Coffee Blues and an Etta Baker style piece that I wrote for this lesson. Here's a sneak peek at where we're going. Before we can tackle several hammer-ons in a row, we need clean technique. If the hammered note doesn't ring as clearly as if you picked it, you've got some work to do. And by the way, the technique in this lesson builds on solid fingerpicking fundamentals. You can grab my free fingerpicking quick start guide at the link in the description if you need to get up to speed on those. But for now, we're going to develop our hammer-on technique. Often in country blues, we play hammer-ons around chord shapes, really without moving out of them. We're going to get to that, but let's strip all that away and look at what a hammer-on really is at its core. We play one note, picked, and the second note, we don't pick, but we hammer down with this snapping motion on the fretboard, and that is what sounds the second note. You don't have to pluck. But you should hear that second note as loudly as if you plucked it. That's a good sign that you've got really good hammer-on technique. So try that on your guitar, and you can use the open first string, your index finger, and come down on the F sharp, second fret, first string. You can test yourself by plucking and not plucking and really listening for how that hammered note sounds. We're not looking for something really soft. You're not coming down deliberately enough if you're getting some buzz along the way. All right, so take some time to clean that up. Come down nice and quickly, and also come down on your fingertip rather than with a flat finger, right? That's not what we're looking for. We're coming down straight with the tip of the finger. But as we talked about, we normally do this around a chord shape, like in Coffee Blues. So that means that we're going to use the middle finger here. We're going to start off the string and then hammer up. So we're holding down the chord shape. This is a common theme with a lot of country blues. We're going to keep the chord shape intact as much as possible and kind of hammer around it. So we only move, in this case, the middle finger to come up and play our hammer. So hammering up from the open to that second. And if we just put that with an alternating bass line and move that hammer on around, you can really feel that start to take shape. Now, we also play commonly a hammer-on around an E chord shape. And we'll do that from the open third string up to the first fret of the third string. So we're going to target the major third of the chord from the minor third, half step below. We're going to take a look at this one specifically when we get to our performance study here. And another one that we commonly see some hammer-ons happening around would be an A, or in this case we can play an A7, the open fifth string, the E on the fourth string, second fret, open third string for the G, and the C sharp, that's an important note for this discussion, is the second fret of the second string. And you can play the open first string. But notice how I have this fretted. That gives me some flexibility with my index finger. I can drop down and play the C, which would make this an A minor 7. But instead of staying there, we're just going to use that as the starting point for our hammer-on. Minor third to major third, kind of like we did here, right? This is an E minor. That's hammering it into an E major. This is an A minor 7, hammering it into an A7. All right, so 3 common shapes here. You'll hammer up from the open to the 2nd fret with a D chord, and you'll hammer into that 3rd string with your index finger for an E, and then hammer up to the 2nd string, 2nd fret from the 1st fret around an A shape. There are more, but let's work with these. Bottom line, the hammered note should ring just as clearly as if you picked it. That's the mark of good hammer-on technique. And with the clean technique in place, we've got to focus on the timing. Hammer-ons in country blues often come in 2 main flavors, those that start before the beat and ones that start right on the beat. And understanding which one is which and knowing where that starting point and ending point should fall really makes everything sound so much better once you can get it down. So let's take a look at those 2 different types of hammer-ons and how we can get them going on your guitar. Let's go back to the D major chord. We're still going to hammer up from the open 1st string to the 2nd fret 1st string while keeping the rest of the chord intact, held down on the fretboard. But what we're going to do here is focus on placing this in time to make it sound more musical. We'll do that by playing an alternating bass line, the 5th string and the 4th string back and forth to a 4 count. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it helps to tap your foot and get a metronome involved here to help keep your timing honest. And what we're going to do is start the hammer-on beat 1 like this. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. Now notice that that hammered note still sounds really clearly as if I picked it, and it falls in between the bass hits. 1 and 2. Right? The thumb played 1 and 2, but the higher note from the hammer was in between. That's the and of 1. 1 and 2. We want that to fall in time on that and. And once you do this and get used to it, get a really good sound going, then we can start to play this multiple times in our measure. I like to play it on beat 4 and then on beat 1 like this. 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2, 3, 4. That starts to give you that musical sound and moving things forward, kind of like you hear in coffee blues, but of course you can move this to different beats that you like. But the other thing that we can do is kind of the opposite of this. Instead of starting on the beat, we can start in between the beat on that and of 1, say, and it would sound like this. 1 and 2. Notice that the hammer falls when the thumb strikes that bass note. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. So get comfortable with that, and then you'll want to mix these together. So this is starting on the beat and then before the beat. And just have some fun with it, moving that around where you start the hammer on, either on the beat or in between the beat. And we're going to do that when we move into our performance study, but over an E chord. Each of these options for timing can have a big effect on the overall feel. When we start before the beat, we get that sort of we're going somewhere feeling, and when we start on the beat, we really feel like we know where we're going. So now let's see how these timing patterns work when we add bass notes, some chord changes, and some melody. The real test comes when you combine these hammer-ons with bass notes, melody, chord changes, all the things that make up a country blues tune. This is where technique and timing have to work together to create some music. Learning some songs can help you do that, and that's one reason why I teach Mississippi John Hurt's Coffee Blues inside the MyBGI membership. If you're not already a member, you can find out how to join at the link in the description, and if you are, then check it out. It's in the library. But things really can fall apart fast when you add the bass notes, the chord changes, all that stuff. Your hammer-ons can feel rushed or maybe just disappear under the pressure of having to move to the next thing. So we're going to break this technique down with an example. It's an Etta Baker style piece that I wrote for this lesson. All right, we've got a few things going on here, but let's break it down. We're playing this part out of an E chord shape. Just like we talked about over D, we're only moving the finger that needs to be moved in order to play the hammer on. Over D, it was that middle finger, but here over E, it's the index finger. We need to expose that third string for just a second as we hammer up to the first fret. That's the minor third to major third bluesy move. We're going to play a couple of melody notes as well. We'll get to those in a second, but we're going to place all of this over a 6/4 alternating bass line. That's a 6th string and the 4th string back and forth. And actually, we come in with one of those before the beat hammer-ons where the hammer falls down on the beat, and that starts on the and of 4. So we count in 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, but we do have a couple of melody notes, and they happen on top of beats 2 with the bass, that's the open 1st string, and beat 3 is the D note on the 2nd string, 3rd fret. All right, and then just finish out with the bass. So that's the first measure. But we also play that little pickup note, the and of 4, to get us into beat 1 of the next measure with a hammer on. We will play a little more melody notes off the beat here with the open 1st string on the end of 1, bass, 3rd string, 1st fret under the chord on the end of 2, then we pinch beat 3, and then play the open string by itself before coming back to the bass and starting that all over again, that 2-bar sequence with just a little change for bar 4. We'll get there though. So right here, as we get ready to go into bar 4, we're going to switch up our hammer-on game. We're going to do something we haven't covered yet, and that is we're going to play a hammer-on from the open 2nd string up to the 2nd fret, 2nd string. Now, we've got to keep that E shape intact, so that leaves the little finger available to do this job. And we're going to hammer up from the open 2nd string to that C sharp 2nd fret, and place that in our melody. And just like before, we start before the B. So and of 4, we play the B, that B note, and then we bring that pinky down. It's kind of hard to tuck under there, but we've got to get it under that chord and let it hammer as we strike the bass string for beat 1 of the next measure. And we just roll through, play the open 1st string, bass, 2nd string, and then the 1st string. All right, so that measure. One more time. And then we can loop that entire part. Now we've got a 4-bar section. Repeating. Now, let's take this part and put it together with an entire blues progression. Premium members, you're going to have access to the tab and the interactive tab player for this in the MyBGI library. Just look for lesson ID 494. Earlier, I showed you how mastering the timing of your hammer-ons can really open up real country blues sounds. But the thing is, even with perfect hammer-on timing, there's one fundamental skill that separates players who sound kind of hesitant and tentative from those that sound confident and really fluid. Watch Tuesday Blues number 426 next, where I'll show you how to overcome some hurdles that keep most players from developing that rock-solid foundation, including the one technique that just makes everything else possible. I'll see you there. Until then, practice smart and play on.